Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 566. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Guys, there are 3 episodes that I look forward to every single year the most.
Okay. I'm glad you added the most on the end.
Yes. I look forward to most of these episodes. No, every single one I do. But the 3 I look forward to the most are, in no particular order, our Christmas movie episode.
Okay.
That's always a fun. That feels like a staple. Our Hangover episode, which is next week. Looking forward to that one already. And tonight's episode, which is what, Zach?
Well, today we're going to talk about our top 20 of 2022, which is a lot of twos.
It is.
But you don't like when we update our top 100 list?
Well, we don't do that annually.
We don't do that every year. So Kyle basically listed the only things we do every year.
But I look forward to those. Like they're
right.
comfort episodes. Like
No,
they're
they're
coming.
great.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do more annual episodes. Make Kyle happy.
I feel like they're staples. Like some things make this podcast unique. Top 10, last 10s are one of them, and then those annual favorites.
All right, great.
Because no other movie podcast in the world does a top list of the movies that came out the previous year. That is unique to this one.
Well, you know what makes us unique is we're pretty much the last podcast to do it every year. It's now like a week before the end of January, and we're finally doing our top list of 2022. But I think that just means we took our time and we made sure that these are the
our due
real
diligence.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we have no regrets. We saw every single movie we wanted to see for the year already.
That's not true in my case, but
You
it
had
might
an
be true in
extra
your case.
month, James. No, it's not true in my case either.
But I did get to see a good deal, and I hit the high notes, I think, for the most part.
Okay.
You know, I'm looking forward to it as well. Thanks, Kyle.
Of course.
All right. Let's jump into it because these episodes tend to be long because we're going to talk about a lot of movies, potentially at least 60 great ones. That's assuming there would be no crossover, but there's probably a little bit of crossover, so probably less than 60.
At most 60.
At most 60. Yep.
Yeah. At least 60 would be impressive.
That'd be pretty amazing if all 3 of us had completely separate lists with no double
With no
movies.
crossover?
Yeah.
I think that would mean that someone's list would be objectively incorrect.
What do you mean incorrect? It's a favorite list.
Yeah. But it would just have to be subjectively wrong.
You don't think
think
it's
that just-
possible I could have watched 20 movies that I never told you guys about that I absolutely loved over the course of the last 365
Loved more
days?
than any other movies you did
more
tell
than
us
the other
about?
20
No.
that we loved. That,
Yeah,
I don't think
I
so.
keep the good ones to myself, all right? That's how I roll.
I think it'd only be possible if one of us made the list for the wrong year.
That's true.
Like, oh, I thought we were doing 2022. Like, it was a weird year, so I thought I'd revisit a bunch of those.
Sure. Yeah, so we're going to need to jump into it here pretty fast. But before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there if you're listening via a podcast app and you've never seen what we look like. The easiest way to find that out is to go to YouTube, search Cinereelists, find us there, subscribe, and watch while you listen. You could also follow us on Patreon, support us there, get extra after show audio amongst other Cinereelist swag. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. That's completely free and will only take you a few seconds to leave us a 5-star review. 5 stars only, please. Also, finally, you could send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, a movie suggestion, any of those kinds of things we appreciate via email, and we will discuss on the show. Also, via email, heyguys@cinereelists.com. Right now, we are soliciting your top 10 of 2020 to be included in our top 10 of 2022 listener aggregate list. I think I said 2020 a second ago. I meant 2022. Lots of twos. The drop-off date for sending us your top 10 of 2022 is Friday, January 27th. So if you're listening to this relatively around release, this coming Friday is the last day you can send us your list. We want as many lists in the pool as possible to get a better vibe for what our listeners enjoyed in the year that was 2022. So make a list right now. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're not in the car or something, you're at home, just pop open an email, heyguys@cinereelists.com. Put down your thoughts, your favorite 10 of the last year, favorite 20 of the last year, whatever. Fire it off to us, and we'll get it included in the aggregate list. That being said, are you guys ready to rank some movies?
Let's rank some movies.
Let's rank some movies.
All right, we'll rank some movies. Let's do it. The way this works is this is our top 20 of 2022. 20 is a lot for each person, and this episode could easily be 4 or 5 hours long. So in an attempt to not do that to you guys, we are going to run down our number 20th to our number 11th fairly briskly. Like maybe a sentence or two per movie, but we're going to try not to go too far into it. Maybe if it's a movie that's never been talked about, you can go into a little more depth. But for the most part, if it's a movie we've already talked about, then we'll give brief thoughts on it and move on. When we hit number 10 to number 1, we're going to slow down, give you a little bit more information as far as why that particular film made our lists. Let's do it. Who wants to go first? I do.
Carl? Okay.
I'm gonna go first. I don't care what Carl says.
Carl's not here right now.
My number 20 most favorite film of 2022. Oh, I should say a little bit of context. I watched 116 films released in 2022, either this
That's
year or over the last 22 days of January 2023.
Okay.
So when I say it's a top 20, that means it's in the top 1/5 plus or so of films that I saw this year. So just to put it in perspective. Also, I thought maybe just little 30-second of what you thought about the year. I thought it was a great year for movies, personally. I got 5-star films on my list, and I don't think that's ever happened since we started this podcast. 5-star films in 1 year. And the top 10 is almost completely 5 and 4.5s. And that also has not happened before. So, yeah, great year. My number 20, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You can find this on Disney Plus if you have not seen it yet. I imagine if you were interested in it, you'll have seen it by now, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed the return of Sam Raimi to comic book movies. Not a perfect movie, but overall entertaining in every Sam Raimi kind of way that I enjoy. And I'll take this from Sam Raimi any day over Oz the Great and Powerful, or whatever the heck he was directing right before this. So my number 20, Doctor Strange 2.
Nice. Kyle?
All right. So I saw 61 movies so far in 2022. Not quite as impressive as James. So that means that my top 20 is in my top third of the year so far. I also thought this was a great year for movies. We got a lot of movies from directors I like, which is always fun. Some I liked, some I didn't. Things to be discussed in later episodes. We also got blockbusters coming back and movies to give me a reason to go back to the theater. And I think that was all a positive thing. I think this was a good year for movies. And one of those movies that I thought was good for this year was my number 20, Nope, from Jordan Peele. This was a last minute addition. It was outside my 20, and I was looking at it about 5 minutes ago. I'm like, you know what? I think this deserves to be in the number 20 spot. It's even though it's not my favorite Jordan Peele movie, and it's thematically a little messy, I still think he tells a story well and gives a lot of interesting things, and he knows how to direct a movie. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. So my number 20, Nope.
Nice. I thought this was a good year for movies. I wasn't mad at the movies this year. I don't know if it stood out to my mind as like a superlative year, but I saw a lot of films in this year that I got really excited about. You guys dropped some good numbers for how many 2022 films you saw this year. Uh, but my number is a little bit different in orders of magnitude. I saw 38 2022 films.
Okay.
So my top 20 represents the top 50% of what I saw.
A little more than half.
But you
Yeah,
also
which is-
were very selective, it sounds like.
I think so. I think we'll have a
Yeah.
lot of overlap at least, which
Right.
is nice. It's just anyone who's listening over the year totally realizes that I just have not been able to see as many movies as my norm this year. I have young kids and my own business that's kind of been popping off this year. But I'm thankful for the movies that I have gotten to watch. And I do quite enjoy all the movies on my top 20. That being said, my number 20 is Bullet Train. I thought Bullet Train was very inventively shot. It wasn't just a phone in, which this kind of thriller seems like the kind of movie that you just phone in. But I got a lot of novel things out of this, and I enjoyed it a lot. It's pretty peppy. It's pretty fast paced and bold and brash, and I thought it was fun. Even for I tend to not like darker comedies, but I still found myself enjoying this one. So Bullet Train is my number 20.
Nice. My number 19 is Weird: the Al Yankovic story, which is which you can find on Roku right now, of all places. And it's the only straight comedy on my list. Which what's happening with comedies? How come we don't get comedies anymore? At least not good. Like, how is the best comedy of the year on Roku and not in theaters? That annoys me.
I think it's because of streaming. They won't take a chance.
I
Dump on
guess
streaming. It's
they're
safer
so
that way.
cheap, though. I mean, like, as far as like horror movies still hit the theaters because there's a chance you can spend like $2 million and then make 100. I mean, comedies you can make for 10 million and make 100. I don't get it. Regardless, it's an interesting parody. Who would have thought Weird Al would make a parody of his own biopic? But he did, and it worked for me to the tune of number 19.
All right. My number 19 is Emily the Criminal, with Aubrey Plaza and Theo Rossi, both who give good performances in this movie. This movie resonated with me just because of how realistic it is, with Aubrey Plaza's character playing a woman trying to live by society's rules, but just kind of being pushed out to the margins because of other factors, and then just going full criminal because of that. And I found it all well acted and well believable that a woman in that state would then make those choices to do what she does.
Nice. My number 19 is She Said, which is kind of a journalism procedural about starring Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan, and it's about their work to form the story that took down Harvey Weinstein. And I think it's very well acted. It's very engaging to watch the dominoes fall into place. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. She Said.
I really liked with that one that they like never showed somebody's face. I liked that.
Yeah. I think you hear him on the phone, but that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was good. My number 18 is the most heartwarming film I saw this year, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. It's an A24 movie with really unique animation style based on a web video that came out like 10 plus years ago that went viral. And now here we are 10 years later, and they're making a feature film of it. And it's a kid's film in theory, but really it's made for pretentious adults. And I guess I'm one of those because I loved it. My number 18.
Yeah, that movie didn't hit me like it hit other people, but
Sure.
I'm glad you liked it. My number 18 is The Woman King, starring Viola Davis. She leads a group, an all-female warrior clan in Africa in the I think early 1800s. And I mean, this movie's got awesome fighting and action scenes. But on top of that, it's got a really heartwarming story about in this society's what are women's roles, what can and can't they do, as well as kind of dealing with slavery and everything surrounding that was going on around that era too. So it's a complicated movie, but it's a movie that I really enjoyed.
Nice. My number 18 we've talked about recently. It's The Menu. I thought this was a well done satire on the comedy or on the foodie world, while also being kind of a well done what will happen kind of comedy thriller. So I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it's my number 18.
Well done. Is that a food joke?
That went over pretty easy.
It's rare for James to like come up with a joke that lands like that.
That's medium rare. Number 17, Catch the Fair One, which is on Hulu. It's the third best revenge film of 2022. It's about a young Native American woman. She's a former boxer, and she voluntarily joins a sex trafficking ring in order to find her missing sister. And it's pretty brutal, super low budget, straight drama that is really well acted and pretty dark. So know what you're getting into. There's definitely some people in peril, people intentionally putting themselves in the way of peril in order to get information so that she can get to her sister. And yeah, I vibed with it. I liked it. My number 17.
Sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it's a good one.
My number 17 is a movie that I believe is a Netflix exclusive. That's definitely where I saw it. Directed by Richard Linklater. This is Apollo 10 and a half. This is a animated rotoscope movie about a boy growing up in Houston during the Apollo program. And this is semi-autobiographical for Linklater since he also grew up in Houston during the Apollo program. So it's partial kind of sci-fi magical realism, partial nostalgia trip, narrated by Jack Black. And it's a movie that I watch with my parents. And it was really fun to see them react to all the nostalgia aspects, which might be treacly for some people, but for them, they lived through all that. So it kind of hit really well with them. So it was a really fun watch to see with my boomer parents. And I think, like Richard Linklater, it's worth seeing.
Nice. My number 17 is Lightyear, the Pixar film. I thought it was really engaging as like an action movie, like an action space movie. And I thought the cat was really funny. The visuals were great. I enjoyed Lightyear a lot. More than I think it generally people did.
I think Lightyear is a better movie standalone than it is a Pixar Toy Story universe movie.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
My number 16 is The Fabelmans, which is currently on premium video on demand. So for $20, you can rent it.
Only 20?
Only 20. It's a Spielberg movie, right? None of them are, well, not none of them. Always is brutal, and 1942 is brutal. But the vast majority of Spielberg movies are watchable at minimum. And The Fabelmans is more than watchable, I would say. I'd say it's like lower upper tier Spielberg, but like top tier is like really, really high. So lower upper is like pretty good, I'd say. At least, somewhere between number 11 and number 20. And I enjoyed the idea that like Spielberg can't make a straight film about his childhood. He had to make a Spielberg film about his childhood. And it worked pretty well. My number 16.
That'd be higher if it wasn't for Michelle Williams' haircut.
I was fine with it. Didn't bother me at all.
I wasn't fine that she kept the same haircut for like 2 decades. I found that so unbelievable.
How long have you had this haircut, Kyle?
Not 2 decades.
Not 2 decades? How long?
No, I don't know. A couple of years. This is on the longer end of where it used to be.
Still generally the same haircut.
Oh
though.
yeah, look at that, James trying to struggle.
I'm just saying.
You're not trying to water, you're sinking.
When's the last time you shaved your head or had long hair?
I used to shave my head when I did Tough Mudder, so that was about a decade ago. So
Okay, so you got another
Yeah.
decade to go. In a decade, I'm gonna see if you've changed your hair in the next 10 years.
okay, I shaved my head. All right. My number 16 is another Netflix exclusive. This is Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out. Knives Out's a movie I enjoyed, and this movie I really enjoyed going back to the world of Benoit Blanc and the murder mystery that they gave us, kind of putting it on its head, giving us a cast of characters that are archetypes for people we've seen in the last couple years within our own society. I thought it was a really well-made, fun movie, and I'm looking forward to more Benoit Blanc movies in the future.
Well, you'll get them.
For sure.
My number 16 is, I think, the first one that we have doubled up on. It is Emily the Criminal.
Nice.
And I thought this was great as like a low budget kind of thriller drama. And Aubrey,
Yeah.
Plays it relatively straight, which I thought she did a great job at, and I thought it's well worth a watch. So my number 16, Emily the Criminal.
My number 15 is The Innocents. It's a Norwegian film about children who live in an apartment building, in different units, different families. But when they are together, they kind of can mind meld and like bend the spoon Matrix style. And it's very let the right one in style, like low key thriller. And it was really good and really creepy and like explored the idea of people who are far too young to understand the result of their actions, and then they're given like an insane amount of power, and like what would happen if like some of them just went off the edge. I liked it. If you can't handle creepy kid movies, then don't watch this, because that's what it is. But it's great and very artfully made.
Innocence?
The Innocents, like they're innocent, but the word "the" in front of it.
The Innocence. Okay. With a T. I got you. All right.
No, not with. Yes, with a T.
Yes,
at the
with a
end.
T.
At the end. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The Innocents.
So most of these movies on our top 20, we've probably discussed on the podcast before. Maybe James, you're a little bit of the outlier here with your 120. But this is my first one that I have not discussed on the podcast yet. You guys saw this. You did it on the podcast. I specifically did not want to do this movie and was gone that week, and ended up being my number 15 of the year. This is Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. A movie I avoided because of the runtime and because Baz Luhrmann is only batting 50% with me. I've only seen 2 of his movies. One, which is not a musical, I really liked, and the musical he did, I really hate. So I was like, Baz Luhrmann doing a musical again? I don't know. But I thought, gotta do my due diligence, see this movie before we do our top 20. And I was impressed. I think Baz Luhrmann was the right director for this movie. This is a biopic of Elvis. It definitely has the trappings of we're going to tell, an entire life story within 2.5 hours. But Baz Luhrmann's directing, Austin Butler's performance, Tom Hanks, who I really liked in this movie, I think all of them kind of take this movie to a different level. And then especially Luhrmann just kind of blowing everything out of the water with colors and sparkles really worked for Elvis. And this movie gave me I don't know, filling a lot of blanks on a pop culture icon I thought I knew, but apparently there's a lot of history I did not know. So good job, Baz. Number 15, Elvis.
Nice. Glad you caught up with it. My number 15 is The Batman. This is the latest Batman movie. This one, it felt like a little bit different from other Batman movies we got. He felt a little bit more like rugged ragtag, like maybe menacing and dangerous. Like I just always think of that one point where like someone where he just doesn't move. Like if someone like makes a move at him, he just stays still. He's like this immovable object basically, unless he wants to move. And I thought it was really well done. It's a beautiful movie. There's a lot of really great cinematography in it. Really good actor transformations in it. I really like this version of Batman. The Batman, my number 15.
He's like the first Batman that actually seems interested in solving crime.
Right.
Yeah, like the detective Batman.
Right. For sure. Like there's actually like a crime and a mystery, and then he's trying to solve it as opposed to just going against a bad guy for the
Or
entirety
a
of the
villain,
film.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
My number 14 is a movie that's been named not once, but twice.
That's a bingo.
It's Emily the Criminal
Nice.
on Netflix right now. I don't have much to add other than Aubrey Plaza rules, and its biggest fault is that it's not a TV show, because I wanted more. I wanted that story expanded into 6 to 8 episodes. I love this character. I love the vibe of the movie, and I want more. We probably won't get more, but I want more. My number 14.
You know, if that movie is made into a show, one of those episodes has like a 10-minute Warner in it.
I would love it.
Yeah, for
I'd
sure.
eat it up.
All right, my number 14 is probably the best time I had in a movie theater this year. That's Top Gun Maverick, the almost 30-year-old sequel, or 30-year later sequel to Top Gun. I thought this movie made sense story-wise about where Tom Cruise's character would be right now. Maverick. I cannot think of his actual name. That's fine.
You mean the character's name?
Yes, I know Tom Cruise's name. I can't think of his actual
Benjamin.
character's name.
I think it's Benjamin.
Benjamin Maverick, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But also, like, just given incredible in-cockpit flight scenes in these jets and fighter jets and dogfights, and just a movie that felt like a thrill ride, but in a good way. That's not a I'm not trying to deride the movie for being fun. This was a fun movie to see in the theater, and worth going to the theater to see. Number 14.
Nice. My number 14, it just got mentioned, Elvis. I thought Elvis had so much kinetic energy in it, and some really I thought interesting central performance. You know, the actor who played Elvis, they could have picked a different actor and we would have had a different take on Elvis, but I enjoyed his take on Elvis, and I liked the energy of this film. I thought Tom Hanks was quite silly in this film, but other than that, I thought there was a lot to love about Elvis.
I enjoyed Elvis as well. It's not going to make my list. Spoiler alert. But I did enjoy it. It's a weird one as far as biopics go. My number 13 is not a biopic. You can find it on Netflix. It's a movie I've never mentioned on this podcast before, titled Do Revenge. I love this. This is the Gen Z movie, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Just wished it could be, for sure. It's like a mashup of Mean Girls and Cruel Intentions and Clueless and Booksmart all mixed in together. It's definitely not a movie that was made for me, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And I'd recommend it to anybody who likes black comedies of the teen-aimed variety. My number 13, Do Revenge.
Well, apparently I need to see Do Revenge, because my number 13 is the aforementioned Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
All right.
A24 film. I remember you and I talked about this, James, and yeah, I definitely liked it a lot more than you did. This is I guess you can call it a haunted house or a single location horror film where there's maybe a killer in the house. It's a bunch of 20-something-year-olds partying out through a hurricane. And The movie is it's a bit of a satire of horror films. It's definitely a satire of the Gen Z generation, but not of Gen Zers, but I think it's more of a satire of how maybe my generation and older perceives Gen Zers to be. So I think the satire is being pointed back at the viewer, not at the characters involved. I really like this movie. I thought it was clever. I thought it was very funny. It has Rachel Sennett in it, who is also in Shiva Baby. She is probably the best character in this movie. She's hilarious. And I had a good time with this one also.
Cool. My 13 has already been mentioned. It is Nope. I thought Nope had a lot of memorable things about it. That chimpanzee, all the scenes with the chimpanzee absolutely stand in my memory. I think the character design of a central foil of the film is memorable. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening in Nope. I think there's some messy things happening as well, but I found it to be quite engaging. So Nope is my number 13.
My number 12 is Decision to Leave, which is on video on demand right now. It's a pot-boiling romance mystery. It's a decently long movie directed by Park Chan-wook, and I loved it. It's another detective story, much like Batman, but not like Batman at all. And with a romance that's centered right down the middle of it, and you kind of think you know where the movie's going to go as far as the romance and the mystery of it all, and then like maybe a little past halfway they spin things on the head, and it's really well done, really well shot, and like has the most inventive scene transitions of any movie I've seen in a long time. Like the way they go from one scene to another, and the way they like at times in the movie they'll place, instead of a scene just playing out, they'll literally place a character in the room even though they're not in the room, and have them observe the discussion or observe the other person as they're like acting something out. And it's not a mechanic of like reality or anything, and they're not trying to be in an alternate reality. They're just like using it as a way for you to say this is why, or this is how. For some reason they're giving you a real perspective to latch onto, even though that's not how reality works, right? We don't experience other people's moments when you're not in the room with them. But anyway, I'm not describing it very well. Go check it out for yourself. It's definitely worth a poke. Decision to Leave.
James, my number 12 is also Decision to Leave.
Nice.
Yeah, directed by Park Chan-wook, who gave us Old Boy and Handmaiden in previous years and decades. Not a ton to add. I would say that this movie feels very Hitchcockian, and I'm not the first person to say that or to notice that, and I'm sure it's very intentional. It is sort of a Vertigo-ish noir, not so much in plot, but more in just sort of feel and relationships. And yeah, that camera work it's something else. Like there are so many zooms in this movie. I've not seen that many zooms in a movie in like 50 years. So you definitely have Park Chan-wook is definitely like going back to some old styles. You have your famous Vertigo shot where that style where the scene is kind of both coming towards you and away from you at the same time. And there are so many other innovative camera techniques, like you were mentioning, James, throughout this movie. Like I lost count after a while because it seems like he's throwing everything camera wise at this movie, and it all works and kind of sort of puts you at unease in this mystery pot boiler, which is more concerned with the characters and the relationships than it is with the actual mystery.
Yeah, like the fanciness of the presentation is entirely unnecessary, but is so entertaining and kind of keeps you in the loop from scene to scene, because it's almost between every scene they have something interesting happen to move you from one place to another. They absolutely didn't have to do that, but it worked very well.
Nice.
Zach, what's your number 12?
My number 12 is RRR.
Oh, you saw it.
Nice.
Yeah. This is a Bollywood film
It's Hollywood.
It's Tollywood.
Yes, Hollywood. Yep.
And this is this movie's hard to explain necessarily. I would say it's more of an experience. It's kind of like the Tollywood. I don't know how to explain this, but it's just this movie is just kind of cinematic wish fulfillment in a way. It just gives you scene after scene of just uh, crazy things happening, and it's fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if it'll make your guys' list. I want to hear what you guys have to say about it too. I'm still processing. I finished it recently, but yeah. My number 12, RRR. It's on Netflix.
Nice. My number 11 is on Paramount Plus, the aforementioned Top Gun: Maverick. I mean, I can't imagine I would have expected this to be on my top 20 list of this year. Partially because I wasn't sure it was even going to come out this year because they delayed this one because of the pandemic. But here we are, like 36 years later, Tom Cruise revisits Top Gun, maybe the movie that made him a superstar actor as opposed to just a really famous actor. And easily one of the best legacy sequels ever created. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I also love that, like, if they wanted to stick to the formula, he never would have gotten out of the plane, right? But they had a little action scene where they're running around on the ground behind enemy lines, stuff like that. Like they weren't afraid to break from the formula when it made sense and was fun. And then when they stuck to the formula, it made sense and was fun. And it all worked very well for me. My number 11.
Pete Mitchell. That's the character name.
The Maverick's name is Pete?
Pete Mitchell. Yeah.
Wow. I never would have guessed that.
There you go. Well, Zach, you don't need to wait too long because my number 11 is RRR.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. I think the best way to describe this movie is it is based on true characters, not based on true events, based on true characters, true people who were in India and who were revolutionaries during the 1920s while India was still under British rule. But this movie is not trying to tell history. This movie is trying to celebrate revolutionaries and show how they were fighting against the evil, evil British, who, I don't know if you guys noticed, the blonde woman who was the governor's wife was the blonde Nazi from Last Crusade.
I did
Same
not
actress.
notice that.
Yep. I didn't notice it, but I saw that I'd seen 2 movies that she was in this year. I'm like, what? And then I saw the connection there. Yeah, this movie is, I mean, insane is the best way to describe it. Each of these characters gets like a 20-minute introduction just to show how amazing they are at whatever their respective skills are, whether it be fighting a mountainside full of people or fighting tigers.
Sure.
And then it's crazy action scene after crazy action scene with some fun dancing and songs thrown in there, which you can expect from a Bollywood's Hollywood Indian style movie. Like, it hits everything you expect. And I'm just going to say my favorite part of this movie was, let's call it chicken fighting gun escape. Is the best way to describe that. My favorite part of that movie. So if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Zach?
My number 11 is Tar. Cate Blanchett plays a fictional conductor. The movie is kind of hypnotic in a way, right? It starts as like almost documentary like in that nothing happening is of any major importance, but you're slowly drawn in more and more and get to know this character very well. And things start to unravel, derail. There's a lot of clever editing and cinematography happening kind of behind the scenes. This movie does kind of a trick on you. And by the end, you're like, wow, I just watched something really, really fascinating. So I like Tar a lot.
Nice. That was our top 11 to top 20. We're going to get into our top 10 of 2022 right now, starting with my 10th favorite movie of 2022. It's EO, the letter E, the letter O, which is a movie about a donkey that starts the film as kind of a circus animal and ends the movie not as a circus animal. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. Oh my goodness.
No,
I
it's
can't believe-
it's literally a movie that follows a donkey and like his life adventures. And there's very minimal dialogue in this movie. I believe it's Polish. I'm pretty sure. So what is spoken is in Polish. Yes, it's Polish. And you're following this donkey from one situation to another, and you briefly get to know the humans that are around this donkey, and then the donkey moves to like the next situation. And so some people you spend a little more time with than others, and all the human performances are pretty good. I enjoyed it. I think Isabella Rossellini? No. Who am I thinking of? There's a famous actress in this. Isabella Huppert is in the movie briefly for like 10 minutes. But so the humans are pretty good in this movie, but the donkey is amazing. I mean, performance of the year for sure, as is the cinematography. This was like the best looking non-CG movie of the year by far. Not only were all the visuals far too beautiful for a movie that's following around a donkey, but also were doing like inventive things with perspective. Like the camera is almost never higher than the head of a donkey, essentially. So a lot of it is from their viewpoint, even if you're like just next to them or looking at them from the side, you're like always looking from their viewpoint for the most part. Occasionally there's even like first person shots. Like there's a moment here where he's a little bit like in a stampede-ish type situation with some cows, and the cows are much larger than him, and they're like squeezing the camera in between cows, and it made me feel very uneasy. I should also say, if you're an animal lover, there's some harrowing stuff in here for sure. And I will, spoiler alert, say it'll be all right, but it's a little hard to watch at times. And at other times it's super inspiring. So just know that you should be ready for a ride, and that things are going to happen that you're not going to enjoy. But keep watching, because I think it's a heartwarming, feel good type thing in the end. And that's why it's my number 10.
Okay.
Right. I thought of 2 jokes about that movie title, so I'm going to go first here.
Okay.
Question 1, is this a prequel to the Banshees of Inisherin?
No,
Okay.
but that would have been great if they had like just magically had the donkey was named Jenny.
And the donkey's name is Jenny.
Right. That would be
Yep.
amazing.
And number 2, so there's no Michael Jackson in this movie whatsoever.
There's no Captain EO.
No Captain EO. Okay.
No Captain
All right.
EO. The first joke was definitely better than the second one. Kyle.
I don't know. Well, I
gotta
thought
work on
leave
it a
with
little
the good one first. Yeah.
Good. Leave with the bad one, you mean?
No, leave the good one first.
Oh, okay.
Really-
Lead. I thought you said leave
Yeah.
with.
No, lead with the good one. Set the expectations high, and then don't meet them.
All right. Fair enough.
Carl?
All right. My number 10 is the previously mentioned The Batman, from Matt Reeves, with Robert Pattinson as the Batman, and who played Catwoman? Not Zoe Saldana. Help me out here.
Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz. Thank you. Other people on this movie, Colin Farrell. I didn't really know if I needed more Batman movies, but I was like, yeah, sure, I'll see this one. And I really liked The Batman. In fact, this is one of the first movies I saw this year that I wanted to watch again. Have not got around to it yet, because of the other movies I've been seeing, but definitely do want to see this one again. I really like Robert Pattinson's The Batman, or his portrayal of Batman, and his portrayal of Bruce Wayne, in so much where he is Batman and Bruce Wayne is the Mask, versus oftentimes you see Bruce Wayne as the actual person and Batman being the mask. In this case, he is Batman. He is vengeance. He is grief. And he is just trying to act like a normal person during the daylight hours. I like that Batman is sort of young in this movie. He's not as experienced. He's figuring things out. He's still using front doors. He's, carrying his costume around with him when he can. And yeah, he's a detective. He actually cares to solve a mystery, as mentioned before, not just stop a bad guy. There are bad guys. There are villains in this, but it's the mystery is more interesting to him than trying to like find and arrest and hunt down the Batman or the bad guy. Not a perfect film. Definitely had some flaws with it, but good enough to make my top 10 of 2022.
Nice. Okay, my number 10. I have not talked about this movie on the podcast. It is called Soft and Quiet. Have either of you seen this?
I've never even heard of it.
I've never heard of this movie. This is good job,
This
Zach.
this movie is worth checking out. I think James will like it much more than Kyle.
Oh, it's a horror movie made your top 10?
Oh yeah.
Great.
Yeah. James, you should definitely check this out.
All right.
So this is man, I don't know how much I want to say because things are revealed as the movie goes on. But it starts with a elementary school teacher kind of organizes like a meeting of other like-minded women, and it follows them as they maybe I'll tell the first little bit, okay? So there's a elementary school teacher, and she organizes this little lunch with other women. It's their first meeting, and you find out in the meeting that it's a meeting for women who are white supremacists. Basically, they all seem like just average, nice little teacher ladies, and eating their little sandwiches, and then they cut their swastika cake or pie, and then you realize like the thing they all have in common is they're just very concerned that people of color are taking over their neighborhood and stuff like that. And then they after lunch they go to a store that one of them their husband owns, and then a person of color comes in, and there's kind of like this altercation. They're all kind of like hyped up for the meeting, and so they're a little bit more mouthy with someone, and the movie just goes from there. The reason why I thought Kyle might not enjoy this as much is the movie is all one take. So basically you're on this runaway train, essentially, like where it starts and the camera never cuts, it never stops, and you're just following along these women as like things are happening and devolving, and it gets harrowing and intense and like thrilling. It's got a great end. It really nails the end, and all of the actresses are phenomenal, and I don't know any of them. They're all like people that are not famous but incredibly talented, and it was just a really great little gem that I found, and I enjoyed it a lot. And it's very timely. I mean, honestly, like the things that it touches on and talks about is very relevant to today.
Yeah. Is this a Victoria oneer or a Birdman oneer?
I doubt they shot the whole thing in one take.
Okay.
But it is not distracting in the sense where you're like trying to find out where the seams are.
So this is like a what was that sci-fi movie about aliens we saw last year? Like it took place in the 50s.
Radio.
No, something night. You know what I'm talking about?
In the dark of the night, in the still of the night, something like that.
It's something like that. Okay.
Right.
Because that movie was a fake oneer, but it at least kept them like things moving.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well. All right.
Victoria was shot in 2 shots, right?
There's a break in Victoria.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I took a lot of breaks during that movie, so.
All right.
Right. So I would say the purpose of this being like presented as one take is not to say like, oh, look at me, look what I can do, or to pretend like it's done anything. it's so that you feel like you're on a ride that can't stop. That like dominoes are falling and you don't get any like break.
Mhm.
You know?
Well, I'm going to add this to my watch list because it's on your top 10. So it's
Yeah.
definitely worth consideration.
Checking out.
Same here. I will
Pretty
check
intense
it out.
though.
It's a Blumhouse movie. I don't think you've ever put a Blumhouse movie on any of your lists.
I don't totally know what that means.
It's a producing group started by Jason Blum, and they're all horror movies.
Okay.
For the most part.
It's like A24 for horror.
Well, you know me. I'm a huge horror fan.
It's like bad A24 for horror.
Well, I mean, it's the same business model as in, like, we're going to put out 15 movies this year, and as long as one of them makes it big, we made our money for the year. I think, as business model wise, it's like A24.
My number 9 is a Netflix movie titled All Quiet on the Western Front. This is also the first movie on my list that's a 4.5 on Letterboxd. Everything I've mentioned so far was a 4. Letterboxd.com at YoJRB. And this doesn't seem to be getting the love that I think people expected it to, certainly that I expected it to. I like this movie a lot. It's very harrowing. It's an anti-war movie. I also watched the original this year for the first time, and I like this better than the original, but just because I like modern movie trappings compared to, what was it, like the early 30s or late 30s, something like that.
Yes, 30 something. Yeah.
When the original was made. I mean, the original one was really good for the time compared to other things I've seen from the time. And this one, the Netflix remake, was super intense, very well made, technically perfect, great cinematography, good performances. I really had no issues with it. I thought it was masterfully made, and it's possible that some people won't enjoy the content of it. I get that. I think it's kind of by design. It doesn't glorify war in the same way that some war films that I also like do. But overall, I think it's a great movie. It stuck with me. It's my number 9.
Nice. My number 9 is The Menu. This is a movie we just discussed a week ago with my wonderful wife, so I'm not going to get into this as much as I would other ones. But this movie gave me what I expected, as in a sort of satire on rich people and exclusive culture, but also gave me something I did not expect, which was a critique on foodie culture, and went places I wasn't really expecting it to go. And I was on board for all of it. I especially liked Anya Taylor-Joy, both her performance and her character. I think without her character, this movie would be fine. But the fact that you have her character in this situation creating some, I don't know, some chaos within this world really made this movie that much more interesting for me. If you want to hear more, go check out last week's episode. My wife has some great things on it too. But number 9, The Menu.
Cool. My number 9 is The Banshees of Inisherin. This is a quirky, small little Irish movie. And I found it super interesting. And I was on board for where it was going. It's two friends. One of them decides he doesn't want to be friends with the other one anymore. And the other one decides he won't take that for an answer. Mostly just because he's too dumb to understand that he needs to just accept it. So he's just too dim to like get it. And he pushes too far. And yeah, I like this movie. It's such a strange, unique, totally coherent, consistent film. And I think it's definitely worth watching. So The Banshees of Inisherin, my number 9.
My number 8, and I thought it was totally consistent and coherent as well, is The Banshees of Inisherin, which may be the most coherent and consistent movie of the year. It's also the best breakup movie I think I've seen in years, and there's no romance to it. It's all just a bromance, I guess, put another way. And
A no-mance.
It's a weird movie because it's kind of dark comedy, but it's also kind of a straight drama. But the movie goes places that I don't think real people would ever really take things sometimes. And yet it still felt very grounded in a reality. And I liked all of that about it. If you haven't seen it, or you have seen it, you want full thoughts, just go back 2 episodes or so of this podcast. We did a whole episode on it. You can find it on HBO Max right now. The Banshees of Inisherin, my number 8.
Nice. My number 8 is another satire of rich people. I thought I'd sandwich these 2 movies together. This is The Triangle of Sadness, or just Triangle of Sadness. There's no "the" in it. This is a movie about 2 models who are influencers who win or are given a trip on an exclusive cruise. I think they're in maybe the Adriatic Sea or Mediterranean, something like that, with a bunch of other much wealthier people. Everyone on this cruise is rich. And this movie, for the most part, is a sort of satire and looking at rich culture and what rich people expect from non-rich people and power dynamics. And it gives you some funny and great moments in those first 2 acts. The captain's dinner, we all know what I'm talking about. One of the greatest scenes I've seen this year. But then this movie does something in the 3rd act to continue the themes it's building. Instead of just being a satire of rich people and look how ridiculous they are, it kind of builds upon those ideas, talks about power dynamics, and the 3rd act really surprised me and is what helped push this movie into great territory for me. Definitely worth checking out. But there's some stuff in it. My number 9 or 8, sorry, 8.
Nice. My number 8 is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
Nice.
This movie is charming. It's just incredibly charming, and I liked this character, and I liked his little world, and I cared about his little things, and I liked the conceit of, kind of documentary being made about him by this guy, and I found this movie incredibly charming. It's like the Paddington 2 of 2022.
Sure. My number 7 is the previously mentioned The Woman King. You can find this on video on demand. My Letterboxd review was simply "more of this, please, all of it," which still holds today. Viola Davis is pretty awesome in this movie. And she's great in most movies, but like in a very Viola Davis kind of way that we've come to expect. And in this movie, she's that. And then you add like this extra layer of physicality that I think nobody has ever really given her the opportunity to show. And I know she worked hard to be able to execute it. And I fully expected that was going to be good. That was the hype for this movie, was Viola Davis. What I got was that and more with this supporting cast that was awesome. Just loaded with women younger and older. Thuzo Mdebu as like the young upstart of the group of female warriors was awesome. Lashana Lynch, who's kind of like the kind of offbeat mentor-ish type character to the youngest warrior, was awesome. There's just a whole cast of ladies in this, all of which I didn't recognize other than Viola Davis. Like this was like first time seeing them on screen that I remember. Maybe they've been in things that I don't remember them in, but in this movie, they're all burned very well into my brain because it was awesome and well acted, well executed, super unique. I'm glad they made this movie, and I hope they make more. Maybe not more Women King, but like more movies in the vein.
Nice.
Cool.
Just so you guys know, I put Marcel the Shell at number 37 on my list, which is one above Cha Cha Real Smooth and one below Fall, the movie about women trapped on a tower.
So you just hated it?
I didn't hate it. I didn't find anything special about it.
I thought you liked Cha Cha Real Smooth.
I did like Cha Cha Real Smooth.
It was all right.
The more Cha Cha Real Smooth sat with me, the more I was like, it's just about like Cooper or whatever and how great he is.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So it's a movie I enjoyed at the time. Haven't really thought about since. So
Right.
that's why that's like down, mid-30s. Those movies I enjoyed, hadn't thought about. Marcel the Shell, Women Trapped on a Tower, all in the same vein for me.
Sure.
All right, the movie I have thought about, my number 7 is James's number 8 and Zach's number 9.
Okay.
That's a bingo.
This is the Banshees of Inisherin. This movie's great.
Yeah.
It really is great. It is one of my favorite scripts of the year. Just the dialogue, the interactions between the characters. You have these 4 main characters. Colin Farrell, who's kind of the dim one. Brendan Gleeson, who's his friend who doesn't want to be his friend anymore, which Colin Farrell can't figure out. Barry Keoghan, who's sort of the village outcast, and then Kelly Condon, I can't think of her name. I feel terrible. Who plays Colin Farrell's sister.
You were
and all
very
4 of them are
close. Carrie Condon.
Carrie Condon. Thank you. Not Kelly Condon. All right. All 4 of them are great. All 4 of them give great performances. They're both funny and sweet and kind of sad. All 4 of those characters. And right, this is a movie about friendship, but it does go places. And it takes that story to weird conclusions that I was totally there for. And this is a movie I've thought about, especially Jenny the donkey. Another great character, the 5th best character in that movie.
Yeah.
My number 7. Yeah.
I'd put her above Barry Keoghan, but if you say so.
Well, I mean, she doesn't say a lot, so I'm just,
It's true.
But with the material she's given, she does pretty well, I think. So, my number 7, The Banshees of Inisherin.
Nice. My number 7 is 3,000 Years of Longing.
Wow.
Wow.
Did not see that coming.
Yeah. James, you see that, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
would not put it there, but I am excited that you like it. I encouraged us to watch it. We never got there
Yeah.
because it feels like the type of movie that, like, even though it wasn't my favorite, absolutely could be somebody's favorite. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear what you thought of it.
I was into it, man. Kyle, have you seen it?
I have not. Should I see it?
Yeah. It's directed by George Miller.
Okay.
Stars Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton. And Tilda Swinton is in Istanbul, and she stumbles upon a jinn. Basically, Idris Elba plays a genie in a lamp, and he at first fills up her hotel room. He's so massive that he just like is laying down in her hotel room because there's no room to stand up. He slowly shrinks over time. But he tells his story, basically, of his whole life and the different masters he's had and the different wishes he's granted, all in a hope to be free. And this movie just has this fascinating, magical quality to it. Like tinged with like sadness and like, I don't know. And Tilda Swinton's character is so interesting because she's not totally shocked by what she's experiencing. She's more just curious, and it's this very new take on a genie story. And visually, there's a lot happening that I think is very well shot and interesting. Yeah, so I found this movie very fresh, and it's called 3,000 Years of Longing, number 7.
It has like a really interesting ending, which I think is why I kept pushing us to watch it for the movie, for the podcast, because there's definitely a discussion to be had for the ending of that movie.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
This is a movie that I agree you can latch on to.
Mhm.
There's meat on the bones on this movie.
I thought this movie's like 3 hours long, but it's under 2, which is impressive.
It's under 2? Felt
under
3
2,
hours long
yeah.
when I was awake.
Hour and 48.
No, hour and 8.
Hour and 8.
Hour and 48.
According to
1 hour, 8 minutes, whatever you're reading.
Yeah,
is wrong.
1 hour, 8 minutes. My apologies. Yeah. That's how you read time, right? It's just the first number's an hour and the rest. Yeah, 1 hour, 108 minutes. It's a long one. Keep going, James.
All right. My number 6 is the previously mentioned Tar. Accent on the A. This is on VOD. Easily the most successful Oscar bait of the year, I would say. That's not an insult. I mean, it feels like Oscar bait, but it lived up to the hype, I would say. Like everything I heard about this was Kate Blanchett and how awesome she is in this and how this is going to win her awards and blah, 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 blah. And I hope it does. I think at least she should get nominated for her performance in this, because while the filmmaking around her is really well constructed and very specific, and I mean, any movie that starts out with like 5 minutes of full credits so that they don't have to do it at the end is like somebody who's thought through what they're trying to do, right? You don't just do that on a whim. But at the same time, Kate Blanchett in this movie is she's interesting to watch until it becomes painful to watch. And it's really her performance, the performance the director captured of her was just really well done and pretty riveting. And I also liked how at the end there's like an element of, I don't know, there's a little bit of like the character had no breathing room in the movie. She'd constructed this world for her where she had to be perfect in it, when clearly she's not a perfect person. And at the end of it, while she doesn't seem super satisfied with where she's at in life, it seemed like she got some breathing room here. And I'm not saying it's an uplifting ending, but I liked how the movie played out in the end. And that's why it made my top 10 list.
Nice. My top 10, my number 6. I'm sorry, guys. I'm losing it here. My number 6 is the previously mentioned Weird: The Al Yankovic Story. This movie is hilarious. One of the funniest movies I saw this year. In fact, the funniest movie I saw this year. Hence its high position. This movie starts with Daniel Radcliffe playing a sort of fictionalized version of Weird Al. And the first half of it is sort of a satire of a biopic. It's funny, but it's just sort of poking fun at all these ideas of how the band gets started, how they make it big, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then about halfway through, this movie just goes off the rails and becomes a completely crazy story about Madonna and Pablo Escobar and drug cartels and Weird Al in camouflage Hawaiian shirts, and has nothing to do whatsoever with his story. And I didn't really make this connection at the time that we reviewed it, but this movie is a Weird Al song. And if you listen to some of the best Weird Al songs, like I Remember Larry or The Good Old Days, or even Royals, the one he did of or Foil, the parody of Royals, those ones, they start kind of just like as a satire of the genre, that maybe the lyrics are a little silly. And then as you keep listening to this story, it gets weirder and weirder and crazier. And Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, is the movie version of a Weird Al song.
I liked it. Zach, did you catch up with that one?
I've only seen the first half of Weird,
All right.
and I've never been able to finish it.
I was
so I
curious.
couldn't put it on the list.
I mean, the first half is funny. The second half is the best part.
So it won't be making my list. My number 6 is Glass Onion. I thought this was a worthy sequel to Knives Out, and I thought there was cleverness going on. I liked the acting. I really like what Rian Johnson can put on screen, and so I was very happy with Glass Onion. My number 6.
My number 5 is The Northman. This is also the first movie on my list that scored a perfect 5 stars on Letterboxd. It's also one that I rewatched here like a day or two ago because Northman came out, it feels like a lifetime ago, but really it was only like 8 months ago. But there's been a lot of movies between now and then. And so I just needed to see it again and make sure, yes, I do think this is a 5-star movie, and I definitely do. Um, Robert Eggers, who directed The Lighthouse and The Witch, movies that I love. And I guess I'm adding Northman to that collection, that trilogy of films. He's 3 for 3 for me. The one-take sequences, the weird folklore, the language, the very specific language that they put to the film, visual language and audible language. The nude volcano set sword fights. I mean, it's this movie's got everything I never knew I wanted in kind of a warrior movie. And yeah, I love it. The Northman, my number 5.
My number 5 is the previously mentioned All Quiet on the Western Front. Yeah, James, I really wonder if this will get some Oscar buzz for international feature or something as we get those. Those are going to be coming out in a couple days, right?
Do they consider Netflix movies like non-domestic?
I think if this was produced foreignly.
But
I
if
think
it was
it
paid
could
for
be.
by Netflix, then
It's
isn't
a
it
good-
a Netflix movie?
That's a good question. I'm not sure
Yeah, I don't know either.
where it'll land, but hopefully it's eligible for international feature.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this is not so much a remake of the 1930s movie, but a retelling of the book that the 1930s movie is based on. World War II movie, definitely anti-war movie, anti-war story. We've seen several World War I movie. We've seen several World War I movies with trench warfare and No Man's Land, and there's a lot of good ones out there. And I think this one added itself to the pantheon of great World War I movies, where it's giving you this anti-war story. You're following this, enthusiastic boy as he gets kind of crushed by war, but you're also seeing war scenes I haven't seen before in a movie from this era, especially with tanks and gas, and some really harrowing things happen. But I was totally invested in this movie. I was totally invested in the main character as he goes through this terrible journey, and I think this is a great movie.
I agree. Zach doesn't. He didn't like it.
Yeah, I didn't like that movie.
That's quite all right.
My number 5, Triangle of Sadness. This movie is so quirky and bonkers, but has like interesting things to discuss, and it's definitely thought-provoking and fun and wild, and it fits really well in a storied history of surrealist satire films, and I was on board for the Triangle of Sadness. That's why it's my number 5.
My number 4, the previously mentioned RRR
Nice.
on Netflix. I mean, what an exhilaratingly absurd movie. I would say it's like somebody watched the history of Hollywood action movies and was like, how can we apply this to people who are not historical figures that are not action stars, but like basically just pretend like they are. And and it doesn't have great CG, but even the CG is entertaining, even though it's not flawless. They're doing things that I think people in Hollywood would be afraid to do, just because they'd be like, we'll never make this look real. And whoever made RRR, the group that made RRR was like, we don't care if it's perfect. We just want it to be fun. As long as it's fun, the audience will forgive us. And I absolutely did. I had so much fun watching this movie. I think it's made to be fun to watch. And it's absurd. It's cliche here and there. I mean, like one of the first scenes is like a guy fighting through like 200 people in order to arrest one person. It's ridiculous, and in all the best ways. My number 4, RRR.
The wire work in that movie is both amazing and egregious.
For sure.
Where like sometimes like a person will get punched with this cool backflip, and other times a person will get punched and they'll just like move backwards on a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not even trying to make it look realistic. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 4, I believe, is a Hulu exclusive. This is another Lega sequel, you can call it, and this
Okay.
is Prey,
Nice.
which is a Predator sequel. I didn't know I wanted a Predator follow-up movie nearly 30 years after the original came out. I like the original. It's definitely a classic, a little campy, a little cheesy, but a lot of fun. I've seen most of the subsequent Predator movies since the original, and they're all varying degrees of watchable to bad. And then this movie came along, and I might argue that this is a better movie than Predator. This is a prequel to the movie. It's the Predator monsters. It's sort of its first time coming to Earth, and in this case, it's coming to Earth in the 18th century, and it encounters the bunch of Comanche warriors as well as fur tradesmen and slavers of European descent. And this movie is both about this young woman, this young Comanche warrior or wannabe warrior who has to use her smarts and her wits and her skills to fight this superior alien, superior warrior. And it's also kind of talking about colonialism and, white people taking over the land from the indigenous tribes. So there's a lot going on in this movie. But in the end, it's just a really fun and well-made action movie. And it's a movie that stuck with me for a long time. Hence why it ended up in my number 4.
Cool. Not one I was able to check out, but looked super interesting. My number 4,
Better than the
has been
first
mentioned.
Predator? No.
Yes.
bold. It's bold.
Sorry, Zach. Go ahead.
My number 4 has been mentioned by both of you. It is The Woman King.
That's a bingo.
I thought this movie really stood out as being a tour de force. It did such a good job of making you care about and root for this lady. And it gave us a setting and characters that we've never seen before in a movie like this. And it was super engrossing. I was really into The Woman King. Very excited when I watched it. Number 4.
My number 3 is Avatar: The Way of Water.
Wow.
Which is in theaters right now and probably will be for the next 3 months or so before the summer movie season kicks back in. Yeah, I mean, I liked the original Avatar well enough. Not my favorite James Cameron movie of all time, but I liked the tech behind it, and I thought the story was serviceable enough. And then 12 years later, James Cameron finally releases another one, and I'm not going to say I was over it, but I honestly didn't really care all that much. Avatar, it was no longer a thing in my life, much like just about everybody else on the planet, except for the people working on the movie, I'm sure. And yet, he did it again. James Cameron, the guy you should never underestimate. I really enjoyed The Way of Water, and it got me back in. And we'll see if this comes to fruition with the promise that we'll get another one in a year, right? Like, I think that's probably his best marketing as far as The Way of Water went, is like, we made this sequel. It took us 12 years, but right behind it, we've already shot the next one. So we're going to Matrix this. We're going to Lord of the Rings it. You'll get it you'll get a sequel within the next year. And I'm looking forward to that. This movie was everything I didn't know I wanted in an Avatar sequel, which was essentially just James Cameron doing his greatest hits and mashing it up into the Avatar world. And I ate from the palm of his hand happily. My number 3, Avatar: The Way of Water.
Nice. My number 3 has been mentioned by both of you already, and this is Tar.
That's a bingo.
That is a bingo. This movie is Kate Blanchett's movie. she is Lydia Tarr, and she carries this movie, and she is so great in it. I just loved watching her performance, and the character she plays is so complicated. Where when you first meet her, she's sort of a pretentious conductor within the classical musical world, and then slowly throughout this movie, you learn more about her, her family, her orbit, and let's say her past and things that are coming up. And this movie slowly develops in front of you, but as it goes on and on and on, it draws you in more and more to both her world and her story. And then for me personally, this movie being with the classical music world, talking about Mahler's Fifth Symphony, which is one of my favorite symphonies, I found it especially engaging just to be sort of back in that music classical world, a world that I have not been in several years. So it was fun to dive back into all of that. I'm expecting Kate Blanchett will get at least a Oscar nomination, and this one will probably get a fair amount in a couple days.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, and Kyle touched on this, is like the one of the magic tricks of Tar is that it's really about like it's not necessarily about the Me Too movement, but there's shades of like what Me Too brought to at least light for me as far as like power dynamics and things like that. That it's less about, you know, females and males and more about like right and wrong when it comes to taking advantage of people or wielding influence over people to coerce them into doing things you want them to do. And Tar is like one of the best films about that I've seen.
Very true. Yeah.
James, my number 3 is also Avatar: The Way of Water.
Nice.
I like this movie way more than the original Avatar. I thought visually it was stunning. I thought the story and the characters were totally there. I was interested in the story. It's a movie that made me care about Avatar, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next Avatar movie. I think that's exciting. I think that he did a great job expanding this world and giving us interesting characters to care about. So I was definitely excited about Avatar: The Way of Water. Number 3.
All right. It was a toss up for my number 2 and my number 1. I'm curious if we all have the same number 1. I guess we'll see here in a minute.
James, we don't.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough. My number 2 is Triangle of Sadness, which is on video on demand right now. Did we all 3 mention Triangle of Sadness? I don't remember.
We did.
That's a bingo.
This is a hilariously dark and biting movie with solid performances all around, even from Woody Harrelson. It's super absurd, but grounded in the truth of the unfairness of like the class system, and it probably the movie that made me laugh the most, but like an uncomfortable chuckle, like a I can't believe they just did that type of thing. But it was all very well earned, and what's the director's name? I want to say Oscar, but that's wrong. Ostlund, Ruben Ostlund. Just as he has a very specific cinematic voice, and of the 2 movies I've seen from him, that voice has worked very well on me. And this one even more than the Snow movie that I'm drawing a blank on.
Force Majeure.
Force Majeure. Yes. This one even more than that. And I really liked Force Majeure, but Triangle of Sadness is I don't know, brutally awkward. I would say intentionally brutally awkward and cutting. And I don't know what it says about me that I really enjoyed living in that world for 2+ hours, but I really did. And that's where I'm leaving it. My number 2.
Nice.
My number 2 has been mentioned by James. I don't think it's going to make Zach's top 20 of this year. And there's also The Northman.
Nice.
Yeah, this is the Viking saga story that Hamlet's based upon. If Alex Skarsgård plays a Viking warrior. He's a prince. His father is murdered by his uncle, and he is out for revenge. And there's other Oedipal-like themes and whatnot throughout this movie. So story-wise, super engaged with this movie. But yeah, just Robert Eggers, when he makes a period piece, which is all he does so far, he makes a period piece. Everything's researched. You're getting the language, you're getting the lore, you're getting the look. I imagine all the clothing you see are made by actual butchered cows and sewn together. Like like his movies are authentic and they're so immersive. And this one gave me everything I wanted from a violent Viking revenge tale. It's great. I really enjoyed this movie. And it's definitely a movie that I want to revisit. I know, James, you got a chance to see it again. I remember that there's that oner you mentioned at the very beginning as they're doing the raid in their wolf costumes. You've got Willem Dafoe in like a cave who's barking and howling. There's this weird family tree of life, which looks like a metal album cover. The music in this movie is so jarring and immersive. Like everything about this movie is cranked to 11. And for me, it just clicked all the time. This movie was my number one for a good chunk until my actual number one came along.
Nice. Okay, my number 2 is the reason we're not all going to have the same number 3, because I'm pretty sure this is your number 1 for both of you. It's Everything Everywhere All at Once. And this movie is totally bonkers, but in such a well done way. It is. I've never seen something that throws so much spaghetti at the wall and then carefully ties up every loose end of the spaghetti by the end of the movie. It's incredibly lovingly crafted pandemonium. And there's just so many elements of it, like the hot dog fingers and the fact that it has Short Round from Indiana Jones coming back in his acting role. And I love so much about this movie. And it's really just madness that everyone needs to watch to understand. It's the reason why Doctor Strange could never be on my list because this movie exists.
Right.
It's just so much better. So it's my number 2.
I definitely agree that as far as multiverse movies, Everything Everywhere All at Once wipes the floor with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness for sure. Although I do like both those movies, but certainly Everything Everywhere All at Once is my favorite movie of 2022. Another one I rewatched just because it came out like 9 months ago for some reason. I feel like they should have held this for like a Thanksgiving release or something like that. I think they would have gone into the awards season. They probably had no idea it was going to be,
I think,
as well respected as it was. Yeah. This is just, it's a movie that is delightfully confusing until it's not. It's ultimately heartwarming. The rock scene is just, who does that? Michelle Yeoh just killing it, which is something, again, you expect from her, but most people in the US know, well, I guess she was in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That crossed over, but there's not too often we get to see her in an action scene. And certainly not that she's aged out of action scenes. It's been so long since we've seen her in anything other than like standing there. And she's great when she's standing there and acting, but in this, she's giving it everything for sure, all at once. Also, Ke Huy Quan's comeback story. Zach mentioned Data from Indiana Jones. I know him. Sorry, Short Round from Indiana Jones. I know him more as Data from Goonies, which is a movie I watched a lot. And I remember sitting in the theater watching Everything Everywhere All at Once and just recognizing his voice. And that's when I realized he was in the movie. Like I had no clue until I was watching it that the guy from Goonies was going to be in it. And then And then he started throwing around his fanny pack and beating guys up. And I was like, I just had no clue that he had done stunt work. You know what I mean? Other than the stuff that I saw him do as a kid. And it was a delightful surprise, both when I watched it and over the course of the last year, to see him get so much praise, kind of out of nowhere, for me at least. And then the other thing is, the first time I was super impressed, but on rewatch, I don't know how they shot this in 36 days. It is absolutely insane. Like, the level, you have to have 2 directors to shoot this in 36 days, because the level of planning that is required to capture the footage they needed, I would say, is just mind-blowing. The fact that they were able to put it all together in a cohesive way, the movie blows me away, from conception to completion. And that's why it's my number 1 most favorite movie of the last year.
Well, as predicted, it is also my number 1 most favorite movie of 2022. Zach, you're so close to a triple bingo, so I'm really curious to hear what your number 1 is.
That's a bingo.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton to add. I think you guys have hit all the major points. Like, this movie is insane by how many ideas it throws at you and how it's constantly changing directions, changing genres, and somehow makes it all work. And what pushed this movie into number 1 for me, and what pushed this movie into 5-star territory for me, and 5 stars I don't give out very easily. This isn't the only 5-star movie I gave out for 2022. What did it for me was there is such a raw emotional core to this movie that I was not expecting. I found myself tearing up during points of this movie, especially towards like that third act, when you're kind of getting into the emotional side of things while all this craziness is happening at the same time. And the fact that this movie could entertain me, could throw insane martial arts, and let me use the phrases like Chekhov's butt plug, which, how often does that to come up in conversation on a regular basis? Not at all. And then give you this emotional core that just worked for me and hit me. Those are all the elements for a 5-star movie for me.
Yeah.
I forgot to
You
mention
guys-
Rakakuni.
Yeah.
Rakakuni.
Yeah. That was so, I love it when movies can be meta like that.
Like where Doctor Strange will give you 2 seconds of Paint World, this movie's like, let's just go to Paint World. Not literally, but they'll give you 2 seconds of it. They're just going to push you into that world, be it Hot Dog Finger World or Rakakuni World, or
And then
Rock.
make it integral to the plot.
Yeah, it's not just a fun thing to go to. Yeah.
All right. The reason why it's not my number 1 is just because I had so much fun with my number 1 in the theater, and it's Top Gun Maverick.
Nice.
That's a bingo.
Yeah,
Nice.
that movie is just pure entertainment, and it's probably one of the best Lego sequels ever made, as far as surpassing the original, giving you everything great about the original and just like making it more fun, more exciting, better, more modern. It was awesome. I had such a fun time, and I love going to the movies, and Top Gun Maverick is one of the reasons I love going to the movies, So that's my number 1.
Nice.
Are you guys interested at all at some quick stats from our top 20s?
Sure.
Yes, please.
We had 8 movies in common between all 3 lists.
Okay.
Nice.
8 movies. Here they are in increasing popularity. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Number 8, Emily the Criminal. Number 7, The Woman King. Number 6, RRR. Number 5, Top Gun Maverick. Number 4, The Banshees of Inisherin. Number 3, Tar. Number 2, Triangle of Sadness. And number 1, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Nice.
So if you're just looking for the hosts of the Cinereelists, that is our top 8.
The host aggregate top 8.
Nice.
Nice.
Kyle had 3 unique films that were only on his top 20.
Oh, 3. Wow.
Yep. Zach had 5 unique films on his top 20, and James had 7 unique films on his top 20.
Nice.
I take that back. James had 6 because Kyle liked The Northman.
All right.
I take that back again. James, you had 5. We both had 5. James and I had 5. Kyle had 3.
All right.
Zach,
And-
I'm impressed that you only saw 30 odd and you got 5 unique ones out of that 30. That's nice.
Yeah, thankfully. Okay, that concludes my stats about our top 10 list, top 20 list.
Nice. I definitely had some honorable mentions. These are movies that also scored a 4 on Letterboxd. So like basically my number 10 to 20 were all 4-star movies. So you could consider like the mention I'm about to mention in honorable mentions. It's a lot of mentions. Those are all 4-star too. So they could have easily been somewhere in my top 20, at least in the back half. The Whale was good. I didn't like the ending of The Whale, but certainly the Brendan Fraser performance is as hyped, I would say. Hustle from Adam Sandler, the basketball movie. I like when Adam Sandler acts instead of tries to be funny, and he's acting in this movie. Barbarian was an interesting horror movie that Kyle and I got to talk about extensively that I enjoyed and I think is unique. And if you're into horror movies or thrillers and you don't mind a little bit of violence, you should check out Barbarian. Jackass Forever. I like Jackass movies. This is one of them. I gave it a 4. Stars at Noon, which is a movie I don't remember at all, but I gave a 4 to. Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, which I think made both of your lists, is a movie that I enjoyed a lot. Prey, I enjoyed a lot. Not as good as the first Predator, but and Moonfall, which was great. Almost a 5-star for Moonfall, but you know, Roland Emmerich, he's a little weird. It's hard to give him a 5.
Such a weirdo.
For my honorable mentions,
he probably has outrageous Airbnbs
that he definitely didn't pay some provocative designer to do for him.
Nope.
He handpicked all that.
when he's not directing movies, he's doing interior design.
He handpicked every Saddam Hussein shower curtain he's got in that place.
Just to piss off his neighbors. For my honorable mentions, I want to mention my numbers 21 through 25.
Okay.
Which were all considered at one point for that number 20 spot, which eventually was given to Nope. So I saw a lot of children's movies in 2022. My son is at that age where if it's animated and colorful, he wants to go see it. And 2 that I saw were actually very much worth it, and I think could be enjoyed by non-children, as in adults. The first one is Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. This is the Puss in Boots sequel. Never knew that like the 6th movie in the Shrek universe would be as good as it is. And this movie is great. It's got great animation, kind of that mix of 2D and 3D we're seeing a lot of. It's got a pretty interesting story where Puss in Boots is on his last life and is trying to figure out what is important to him in life, and has an actual scary villain, which you don't see a lot of in kids' movies anymore. I think kids' movies are rather tame, and this movie doesn't mind like giving this bad guy who's scary. I found to be scary, for a kids' movie, and I was happy to see that. The other one that I really liked is The Sea Beast, which is on Netflix. It's kind of a How to Train Your Dragon style movie. Instead, it has to do with like a coastal village and beasts of the sea, but the animation's really good, the voice works really good, and the story is something I really enjoy too. Bullet Train, that was on your top 20, Zach. Great movie, not quite as good as Tarantino or Guy Ritchie, but still a lot of fun, especially for a single location. Avatar 2, another great theater experience I had. Didn't quite make top 20, but was fun to see in the theater. And then the last one, which is actually a listener recommendation, is Resurrection, which is a Rebecca Hall horror thriller. I say more thriller with horror elements to it. Another great performance from her and Tim Roth. Warning about this movie. This movie has to do with abuse and trauma and definitely goes places and shows things. It's not an easy movie to watch, but I think it's really well done and has a great Rebecca Hall performance. There's a moment where she is describing the past trauma that she experienced, which is central to the movie. And it is an 8-minute unbroken monologue of the camera just slowly pushing in on her face as she recounts this history. And that it is one of the best performances I've seen unbroken from this year. So
I like
my honorable
Resurrection
mentions.
as well. Like that, it's a very Hitchcockian movie, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool. Honorable mentions I had The Northman, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, The Lost City. I thought had funny moments, and Fall. I thought was interesting.
Almost as good as Marcella Shell for you, isn't it?
As good as what was the movie we were comparing it to?
Cha Real Smooth or
No,
something like
what
that?
Fall was like the same ranking.
Oh,
as some
oh,
other movies.
Fablemans.
Fablemans, yeah.
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 No, I'll let you guys know that Fablemans came in at 26 and The Fall is down at 36. So I did like Fablemans 10 spots more than Fall.
All right, fair enough. I also have some regrets for this year. And what a regret is when it comes to making a list like this, a top 20 of a year list, are just movies that I wanted to see before I made the list, but for some reason did not get to. Whether it just wasn't available to me, or I didn't have the time, or a host of other reasons. But they're movies that I think, based on what I've read, based on my research, may have cracked a top 20 had I been able to see them before making this list. My first regret is Saint Omer, which is a French legal drama about a Senegalese woman who's accused of murdering her 15-month-old child by leaving her on a beach where she is swept away by the tide.
Oh, God.
Yes. I've heard
No,
it's
thank
really
you.
good. The guys from Film Spotting, it was like in their top fives. Like everybody who saw it loved it. And so I think had I seen it, maybe it would have cracked the list. Women Talking is a movie that I don't know much about, except the cast is Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, and Frances McDormand, all actors that I enjoy, and it's getting good reviews. I wish I could have seen it. Living, which is a British adaptation of the 1952 film Ikiru, directed by Akira Kurosawa, which I've never seen, but supposedly is good. And there's a good performance from Bill Nighy in it that he's getting nominated for here and there. And so I want to see that. Happening, which is a highly acclaimed abortion drama. I'd like to see that at some point. Moon Age Daydream, which is the David Bowie biopic. Heard it's good. Want to see it. Corsage, a historical drama set in the 1800s about Empress Elizabeth of Austria, who had an eating disorder. So she's like in the public eye, and she's bulimic, I believe, or anorexic, one or the other. And I just think that'd be an interesting film subject, is like in a world where those things don't really exist, and you're like a very public person, even if it's not the level of fame as we know famous people to have today, the pressure to like be attractive. And then putting that in a period piece, I think that could be interesting. Hit the Road, which is on Paramount Plus. I have no excuse for not getting to this, but it's a comedy drama road movie about an Iranian family who are trying to smuggle their young adult son out of the country, and it's supposedly heartwarming and fun. Nitram, which is about the 1996 Port Authority massacre in Australia. This is their mass shooting in the mid-90s that happened, where it made them completely change all their gun laws. And I heard it's good. I want to see it. Deadstream, found footage comedy, horror movie. Heard it was good. Didn't get to it. Boiling Point is probably the one I want to see the most. Cannot find a copy of this movie anywhere. It's a UK cooking movie presented in one take. And supposedly it's like the pot boiler cooking movie of like the intensity of being in the kitchen during the rush, the dinner rush. And it's supposedly really well done. I think it only aired on TV, possibly. Anyway, two more. Great Freedom, a World War II set drama about a gay guy in a prisoner of war camp. That would be tough. And finally, Intragalde, which is a Romanian thriller about some, what do they call them? when you're like a tourist, but you're like going to a place to not only experience it, but also to help people. I forget what
Like
they
a
call it.
missionary?
No. There's a term for this, and it's not flattering. It's like charity tourism or something like
Oh,
that.
okay, yeah.
I forget what they call it. But anyway, it's a Romanian thriller about a bunch of people who are there to give aid to Romanians. They get stuck in the mud, and it's like single location drama thriller, and also comes with high marks. Those are all my regrets for 2022. Did you guys have any?
I did, yes. Some you mentioned, some you did not.
Okay.
Women Talking.
Mhm.
Want to see that. Just have not available yet. After Sun, which is a movie about a father and daughter on a road trip. That I think things get revealed. It doesn't seem like my kind of movie, but it's been on so many number 1 or top 10 lists for end of the year that I think it's worth at least checking out.
I will say I did not like it, but
You did not like it. Okay.
but I agree. I am in the minority. It's made
Right,
so
yeah.
many lists. I mean, I vaguely understand why people like it, but I didn't do anything for me.
There's this movie I found called The Knights of the Coconut, which is about a genocidal robot coconut trying to take over the world. That just seems like, why not? Like, it's only 90 minutes.
That sounds way more entertaining than After Sun was.
Yeah. So I feel like for After Sun is going to be 3/4 of just like driving during magic hour to piano music. And then the last quarter, things will happen. And you got to like bear through those first 3/4 to get to that last quarter.
Kyle, you're not too terribly far off.
I know this is not my movie. I just know what this movie's going to be. Like, it's like, I think Burning or Waves is probably the same way, which you guys keep telling me I should see.
Oh, no. Burning and Waves, you might think it's those things, but it's not.
Okay. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
those things.
No,
All right.
no,
Good to
no.
know.
But After Sun, I feel, is exactly what you described.
All right. EO, I want to see. The Whale, I want to see. And then 2, I purposely sat on. I could have seen them, but I wanted to see if they popped up on your top 20 lists before I saw them. Was Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and Bardo, which neither of you mentioned, so I don't know if they're worth my time right now. Maybe I'll wait to see if they get some Oscar nominations.
I saw Pinocchio, and I think if you're interested in a Guillermo del Toro movie,
Yeah.
or Pinocchio, you should watch it. If you're not feeling any of those things in this particular moment, I don't know. It's very pretty to look at, and it'll probably win animation awards. Might be worth watching it for that, just so you know what it is.
Yeah.
While you watch awards, but it's very much those things. It's a Guillermo del Toro stop motion movie about Pinocchio.
Is it something my son could watch?
It's pretty scary. Will you let him watch Coraline or something like that?
I might let him watch. He likes Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's in that vein.
It's not as fun, but
Okay.
as far as like the scariness level, probably on par.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Cool. My regrets: Decision to Leave, Prey, After Sun, The Fablemans, and Puss in Boots.
Nice.
You guys are big on Puss in Boots, huh?
It's way better than it should have been.
Oh, you saw it.
Oh, yeah, I saw it. Yeah, no, that it was one of my honorable mentions.
Nice.
It was my number 20 until I decided to put Nope in that spot instead.
It almost made your top 20.
Almost made my top 20. That's how much I liked it.
Did you ever see the first one?
Oh, of course not. No, I haven't seen the Shrek movie since like the second one.
You
I
say,
got
of
out
course
the whole
not, but you saw the second one. Why would somebody not assume that you saw the first one?
I know. I saw Puss in Boots. Well, because Puss in Boots came out in 2011. I'm not going to, when I was.
Oh,
whatever,
you didn't
how
have
old
a
was it?
child then.
I didn't have a child back then. I'm not going to just go watch like random Shrek, Shrek adjacent universe movies.
Fair enough. I
But
guess.
now that I have a child and he likes to go see movies, which I think is great that we go see movies together, I'm trying to do a little scouting of like, hey, which one am I going to like here? So
Sure. Nice.
it's one of those one for him, one for me kind of situations.
All right, moving on. I may have seen a lot of movies this year, but what I did not see was a lot of documentaries. And I don't know if that's just because it was a light year for documentaries or if I was just slacking. I don't know. But I only saw 3. All 3, I would say there's something for people with. One of them is already dated because Kanye decided to publicly proclaim that he likes Hitler. But Genius, a Kanye trilogy on Netflix, I watched before he embraced Hitler, and I thought it was great.
Publicly.
Super
embraced Hitler.
Publicly embraced Hitler.
On Alex Jones.
On everybody who gave him a microphone, basically.
Yeah.
But Genius, which was made by a friend of his, is an interesting, not flattering portrait of a guy on the come up who loses his way and also has mental health issues. And it very clearly spells out like a progression of how he's always had these issues, but how fame can exacerbate things, especially in the public eye. And I thought it was a really well-made documentary that gave some context as far as why Kanye does Kanye things. And I think even the current meltdown that we're somewhat in the middle of makes sense when you try to make sense of his actions. And I'm not saying he deserves to be afforded that luxury of people trying to make sense of his actions, because I think he's definitely crossed the line this year for sure. Like there is a line where you don't get another shot. And I think he's probably crossed that line. But the documentary on its own, when it was released, very well made. Another one I saw, This Place Rules, which is the Channel 5 YouTube channel, which made a full documentary. Andrew Callahan, who's also currently in hot water, made a documentary that HBO picked up. And the documentary...
He's in hot water?
He's in hot water, yeah. You can go read about it. It's really not that upsetting. It's actually... I think he's done a decent job of navigating his wrongdoing. But we'll get into that some other day. The documentary was good, though. And I'm glad I watched it before I heard all this other stuff about him. Then the last of the 3 documentaries I watched this year, according to Letterboxd, was the Volcano Colon Rescue from Wakari, which is an in-person, in-the-moment footage accounting of a volcano that was treated like a tourist attraction and then erupted while people were touring it. And it's good. Did you guys have any favorite documentaries from 2022 that you watched?
Well, you may find this shocking. I only saw one documentary in 2022. And it was Untold: the Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist. This is the Manti Te'o story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, he was a college football player who had this story about his girlfriend who survived cancer on the same day that he won the Heisman or something. And then it slowly came out that his girlfriend didn't exist and that he was being catfished. And I remember that story, and I couldn't really remember if he was in on it or not, or if it was a way for him to hide his sexuality. So it was interesting to watch this, to hear from him, to hear from the person that catfished him, and to kind of just be reminded of this whole thing and sort of hear this story and be reminded about how we reacted to online dating and online scandals 15 years ago when things were still kind of new versus how maybe people would react to that story now. So it's not a great documentary, but for, kind of reliving an era and a story I didn't remember a ton, it was fun to watch again.
Cool. I think it was a light year for documentaries because I'm normally all about it, but the only one worth mentioning is the Tinder Swindler on Netflix.
Oh, I heard of it, yeah.
And this is about a guy that conned many, many women by basically having them pretending to be ultra wealthy and bringing them along on these fantastically expensive weekend trips around the world. And then he would ask to borrow money for under some context, and that would fuel his next weekend with some other woman. And so he's basically a broke guy that is living this lavish lifestyle that's being paid for every one of his victims. And it's very interesting to see how it plays out. So I enjoyed that one.
Nice. Haven't seen that yet, but it's been on my list. To round out this episode, our top 20 of 2022 episode, we always like to leave it on a high note by talking about movies that are really a low note. The biggest disappointments of the year. These are not movies that we necessarily hate, although maybe we do. Who knows? They're not the worst films of the movie. They're not the worst films of the year, unless they are. But they're movies that like we had some hope in. We thought maybe this might be on a top 20 list at the end of the year, potentially. And it turns out didn't get there for one reason or another. I'll start with my biggest disappointments of 2022, starting with Bros, which is directed by the guy who directed Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Get Him to the Greek, and the Neighbors films, which are all movies that I enjoy.
Nick Stoller?
Nick Stoller, yeah.
Yeah.
It stars Billy Eichner, who I really haven't seen in much, but love his YouTube show. What's the name of it? Billy on the Street. Billy on the Street. I've been watching that for like a decade plus. I find it hilarious all the time. And I was ready for like him to be more than a YouTube guy, stand-up comedian type, and be in like this big budget, highly successful comedy. And it wasn't funny. And that was kind of, I was ready for a good comedy, and I did not get that. The Pale Blue Eye, which stars Christian Bale in a period piece, directed by Scott Cooper, who directed Crazy Heart and Hostiles, two movies I love. And The Pale Blue Eye was so boring. It was brutal. I was wondering why Netflix put it out like in January, right after Oscar season, and now I know. They didn't expect to win any Oscars, that's for sure. Bardo, which Kyle thought maybe was a regret. You could absolutely see Bardo. I think there's things in there for people to latch onto. It's Inarritu's follow-up to Birdman and The Revenant, which are, again, movies I love. The movie's certainly visually interesting, but like way too strange and disjointed for me. It's like a very much like a head trip movie that does not live in a straightforward sense of time, I would say. It took me several viewings to get through it. And,
that's not good.
And I don't know many people that liked it. So seems like it's generally getting ignored. Another Netflix movie that I think they had high hopes for, but didn't go anywhere. Don't Worry, Darling. Olivia Wilde killed it with Booksmart. I was ready for Don't Worry, Darling. Just didn't do much for me. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I was into it. Didn't like it. Thor, Love and Thunder. Loved Waititi's first take on Thor. Second one, perfectly fine, but less funny. Should be more funny. That's how these things work. You make a second movie, more funny. Not less funny, more funny. And then finally, Nope. Which, again, it might be an expectation thing, but Get Up, Get Out, and Us, I love. And Nope just kind of sits a step or two below that. Maybe over time, I think this one of all of them has the opportunity to change over time. Maybe when I get to revisit it, I've only seen it once. Maybe there's more to it than what I remember. I definitely remember the shoe scene, but only because he never reveals what that's about. If he had actually revealed it, then I probably wouldn't even remember that. But yeah, I think there's something there for Nope, but ultimately when I was thinking about it, one, I didn't give it over a 3.5 to begin with. And two, I was just kind of like not inspired to rewatch it to see if it could crack the top 20. So that's where it sits as one of my biggest disappointments. Did you guys have any?
I did, yes. It's interesting that Bardo was on your disappointment list. That may just get dropped from my watch list. That may not be worth the 2.5 hours.
More probably because of Birdman and The Revenant.
Yeah. And The Revenant's great. I love The Revenant.
I love both of those movies. And so this being, I mean, The Revenant came out in 2015. So it's been 7 movies since I've gotten an Inarritu movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I got. I think
right.
Maybe that's where the disappointment lies.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of big name directors had movies come out this year. Probably pandemic is part of that.
Mhm.
Two of those big name directors who are favorites of mine had movies come out this year, which did not work for me. The first one was Men, directed by Alex Garland. This is with oh, I don't like her and Jessie Buckley.
Mhm.
Well, I've no problem with Jessie Buckley, but it seems like every movie I watch her in, I don't like. So I just maybe she doesn't choose projects that I like.
Wait. Did you watch the Rose one?
Not yet. No, Wild Rose. It's on my list.
All right. You're going to
I've just
change your
been-
opinion after you see that.
I know. But again, it's nothing against Jessie Buckley. I think she's a good actress. It's just for whatever reason, I don't like the movie she's in.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's not you, Jesse. It's your agent. Yeah, Men is Alex Garland's horror movie about male supremacy and misogyny, and the message doesn't really go beyond that. Like, boy, aren't men bad? And there was opportunities for that movie to be more personal, to go somewhere. There's definitely things that happen. It's got one of the weirdest final 5 minutes I've ever seen in a movie, especially this year. But beyond the weirdness, it's just kind of a skin deep movie.
Mhm.
For, we've seen a lot more movies have been coming out. It's about boy, aren't men bad, and can tell the story much better than Men itself. Damien Chazelle with Babylon. I still don't know how I feel about this movie. It's all over the place. It has some of my favorite scenes of the year and some of my least favorite stuff that I've seen on screen this year. So I think overall I'm disappointed by Babylon, because I think with a little editing, it could have been a great movie, but this throws everything at the wall. And unlike Everything Ever All at Once, does not try and tie together all the elephant poop. Just leaves it all up there. And then Chippendale's Rescue Rangers was looking forward to a Lonely Island take on this cartoon that I loved as a kid. And what the heck was that movie? Boy, oh boy, was that a disappointment and bad. I have not thought about that movie aside from how much I did not enjoy that time with that movie. There's so many possibilities that movie could have been, and instead we got weird noir, like bad Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
So those are my three. Yeah.
Babylon was a disappointment for me, but by far the biggest disappointment was Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Because I loved Chippendale Rescue Rangers as a kid, and I loved the Lonely Island, and putting them together, I didn't like what I got at all. So
sometimes two rights make a wrong.
Yes.
I don't remember us being that negative on Chippendale.
Oh, I was definitely.
Zach was hard on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was like so long ago. All right.
I'm gonna look up what I gave it.
Any other disappointments, Zach, or was that was the big one?
Yeah, those were the big ones. Others I was slightly disappointed by, but
okay.
I wanted Jurassic Park to get a Jurassic World to get a better ending.
Oh, I forgot that even happened this year. I think my expectation was so low after the last two.
Sure.
That
It's hard to be disappointed in that movie.
Right. Yeah, but I forgot that even happened this year. What was supposedly the penultimate version of Jurassic Park, where they got all the old cast together. That happened this year.
Yeah.
Didn't even remember it happened. Crazy. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode 566 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership and listening this far in. It's great. Hopefully you heard of some movies you've never heard of before and have found some new things to watch, and maybe gotten off the fence on some other things that you should watch but haven't made the time for. If you know of a movie that we should watch that you would put on your top 10, then you should email it to us. Not only the movie, but your entire top 10. You should email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. You should do that right now, because you didn't listen to me at the beginning of the episode, but now we're at the end. So it's time to do it. Break open an email, send us your favorite 10 movies of 2022 to be included in our listener aggregate list. If you don't do it right now, then you better do it before Friday, January 27th. That's the cutoff date to be included. We've been getting emails all this past week. They're flooding in. We need more. Because the more we got, the more accurate the list is going to be. So send us an email. heyguys@cinereelists.com. The email is in the show notes. Also, check us out on YouTube. Support us on Patreon. Leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only, or follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok @Cinereelists. Or you could follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd @Shaban.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
We will be back next week with our annual Hangover episode, which will contain more lists in one episode of a podcast than any other podcast on the planet. Guaranteed. We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.